Oh, what am I gonna do today? Well, hello, Shiny Crafty People. It's Tim Totten here, and welcome back to the channel. You know, I've been making a lot of cool videos lately, but not all of them are about beginning sewing. And a lot of my design, all of my ideas for this, and a lot of my ideas for this channel are about how everyday basic sewers, people who are just starting out and learning, can make something really meaningful and valuable to them or their family. And so today I want to show you how to make memory pillows. And these are made out of a button-up shirt. Doesn't have to be long sleeve. This one was, but it doesn't have to be. And as long as it just buttons up the front, you can easily make this. And it's so much easier than a regular pillow because the back is just normal. In fact, what we do is we put the pillow through the button. So you just button it up. Once you got a pillow ready, you put the pillow in, button it up, it's done. You don't have to learn any special skills. In fact, all you need to do is sew around 4 sides. That's it. It is so super easy. Now, when I first started working in a funeral home, one of the things I did was make memory bears out of people's clothes. And I did lots of them, hundreds of them, in fact, for people, and made some memory quilts. And I'll show some of those to you now as I'm talking. I love doing those, but they required quite a bit of skill and stuffing, and they were hours of work each. This takes maybe 20 to 30 minutes if you're really slow and don't know what you're doing. Really, most of us could probably assembly line 10 of these in maybe 2 hours. So it's impressive. You can really fly through these. So why don't you join me down at the cutting table and I'll show you what you need to do to make your a very easy beginner's project, these memory pillows out of button-up shirts. So for this project, we're gonna need a button-up shirt. It's important that it's a shirt that buttons all the way up here so that you can get the pillow in. And we're going to, I'm actually gonna use this sort of reddish purple one. What we're gonna do is just take out the hanger, right? So we'll need this shirt. We're also gonna need a pillow form. This one happens to be from IKEA, and it's a 20 by 20 form. So we'll deal with that in just a minute. I'll need some scissors probably, but more likely a rotary cutter and some type of a rotary cutter ruler. You could get a square one that would work really well, but usually most people don't have a 20 by 20 square. So I'm going to go ahead and button this shirt back up. See, the reason I was telling you earlier why this is so good for beginners is that it literally doesn't require you to do anything but sew 2 squares together. I mean, that's literally how easy this is. And because you're gonna use, and that's because you don't have to do like an envelope style backing or put a zipper in or anything. And I like the fact that we can leave a pocket on the front of it because then that can be a place that you can put other memento items or maybe a photograph or something else. So I am gonna show you something that's super important to deal with. And that's because most shirts like this will also have in the back a bit of a pleat. And so we've got to deal with that because if you were just to lay this out and not flatten it properly, you might cut that pleat a little weird. So we have to decide, do we want to maintain the pleat on the back? Let's look to the back of this and you'll see this pleat that's in the back section. So do we want to maintain that? If we do, we'd want to be real careful with how we laid that out properly. So what I'm gonna do is take this shirt and just lay the pillow form on top and see, would I be able to get the size out of it? I mean, I will be able to do that. And so I'm just gonna cut this very top portion off right here. I'll cut right along the top of that. And there are conveniently lines on this shirt. It's gonna be super easy. If you wanted to use the collar for something else, you certainly could save the collar. I'm really not worried about it. And I'll probably cut these sleeves off separately. So watch this. I'm gonna chop the sleeves off. Chop those off. I'm gonna show you something later that you could do with the sleeves, just a little explanation of what you could do with the sleeves if you felt like it. I'm just cutting right along that seam because we're not gonna use that seam where the sleeves were. And now you've got sort of a nice breezy redneck shirt, and I could say that I grew up as a redneck in the middle of the woods. Or you can not have a redneck shirt because you're gonna make a pillow, right? So we're gonna cut right across the top. And because I say that, if you wanted to use this for something, you certainly could. I'm just gonna drop it to the side. Now what the most important part is to flip it over, because now we know we're happy with this. I'm gonna flip this over and go ahead and try to line that part back up there. We're going to use this top and I'm just flattening it with my hands so that everything underneath is nice and flat. And I want a 20 by 20 square. And it's interesting, I can't get that out of here. And that's because this is not really a true 20 by 20. It might say it's 20 by 20, and if you flattened it out completely, it might get to that. But really it's about an 18-inch, 17-inch wide pillow if you just measure across here. So if I went from the point over to the other point, you're only looking at an 18 or so inch pillow. So in fact, I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna see how wide is this. This piece is only 17 inches. That's all I need to get is a 17-inch square. So what I will do is go ahead and cut straight across the top here. And then I can mark this. I do have a marker to mark down further, 17 inches from the top, put the marks on it. It's gonna be hard for you to see it because I'm marking in black and this isn't really noticeable. And then I need to measure down 17 inches. Now it might go off the screen for you. I don't know if it's gonna do that or not. My camera's pretty high up. I'll do the 17-inch mark down lower. See if it's the same on both sides. 17-inch mark. Yeah, it's pretty much the same on both sides. Pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that straight across. So there's a line there. Might not be easy to see. And I'll connect both of the bottom together to get that same mark. Got it there, and I'll make sure I measure 17 to 17 here. And then I'll just use my rotary cutter and go ahead and cut that out. Here's the other good part. This thing is literally going to be, when it goes together, it's going to, the pillow form will fill it. So it's gonna be nice and filled. You're not really worried at all. So what I'm gonna do now is take the back off, flip the front over. You see we have that pocket there. And now this is the nice flat square. And now what we've gotta do is basically put the back back onto our square. I'll line up one side, one edge. Now that was the back. I gotta make sure I have the right way. You could certainly pin all this. I'm at my workshop, which is a different location, or my office, I mean, which doesn't have all of my pins and other stuff. And I'm doing this for you on the day right after I've just finished laser engraving. That's why you're seeing all this laser engraving stuff behind me. And so I don't have all that with me. What I'm gonna do instead is go ahead and just do it by hand. And then I'll find a couple clips or something to hold this together. So what I've done here is just make sure that I've got that piece back in. There we go. And you could, if you wanted, you could just flatten this out completely, and maybe that's a better idea. Let me just flatten it out completely. I don't want to save that. I'm a little worried that it's not going to work right, so I'm not going to save it. If you were going to do it, you could pin it all in, but I don't want it to not hook together right. So I'm going to flip it completely over to this side, make sure everything lines up. And then I'm going to cut this off right along the edge so that the two pieces are the exact same size. If I had stitched it beforehand, I could have stitched that pleat back in. I'm not going to do it. Now all I have to do is just sew around all four sides of this. So let's go to the sewing machine and see that process. I'm going to use a little more than a 1/4 inch seam on my sewing machine. Just so I want to make sure I catch everything inside this seam. And I'm using about a 2.5 to 3 on the stitch length. Again, again, I want this to be super easy for beginners. So if this is the first time you've ever sewn anything, it literally is just one straight stitch. Make sure that it goes right from one end to the other. I stitched right down there, and then I'll come to this side and start right where that stitch finished. I'm even starting off the end, and I'm just gonna make sure that all of these pieces of fabric just stay right next to each other, lined up. Now here's where you gotta be careful. You're just gonna grab, I'm gonna put my fingers at the other end and just make sure it's straight. I'm going across a bit of bulk where that placard was for the buttons. Make sure you aren't cutting across a button, by the way. So see, as I went down there, I'm just making sure that this end, these points still line up. And I'm back stitching at the ends and at the beginning just to make sure that it really tucks tight. So now I go again. And you can go off because we're not worried about how pretty those corners are. And again, you can't see it, but I am off at the other end, making sure that that each end has been done properly. The two end fabrics, the top and bottom, are actually properly connected. Now this is where that sleeve came from, and I'm not even going to take the material out, but you could. You could rip that material off if you felt like you needed to. I'm not worried about it. Again, I've back stitched there to make sure that it's working, and I only have one left to do. And the reason that I can do this, you know, a lot of times you see people say, they'll even without speaking, they'll just do the sew around, they'll do this, they'll go like with their hand or something because they're not talking through the videos. Those annoy me, but it's fine. Everyone has their own way of doing it. Here, you can just sew all four sides because we're actually just gonna unbutton it to get it open. We're literally gonna turn it inside out through the buttons. It's the easiest thing. Now there is a button right here. Do you see this? I almost sewed over this button. So what I've got to do is just chop the button off. I'm just going to go with a pair of scissors and chop the button off. Just get my scissors between the fabric and the button and giving it a cut. And it's out of the way. You could pick it and do you could do a whole bunch of this, but I'm literally going to sew right over where that button was, so who cares? And if you need a bigger, wider seam allowance to make you comfortable doing this, take a wider seam allowance. It's not gonna hurt anybody. All right, here we go. There's a pocket here that you can't quite see, and there's all those buttons. I took a button out right up here where it was too much. So now all I have to do is unbutton the buttons to turn this thing inside out. And I could have left probably most of the buttons unbuttoned, but I wanted it to stay together. I will leave this bottom one still buttoned because it doesn't really matter. And then I just turn it inside out. Now, I'm gonna give you a no-no. Do not, especially if you're new, do not use scissors to go in and push these corners out. Don't do it. Find something else to do it with, something that's blunt, like a chopstick or a knitting needle. I'm gonna use the end of this highlighter. Real simple. I'm gonna use the end as highlighter. Just go in here and just push that corner out. I'm not worried about these being super crisp corners. You're not really gonna see them when you put the pillow in there. So I'm just gonna turn all those corners inside out. And here's what I'm doing. I'm just gonna go pop those inside out. All four of them. Super easy to do. See here, I've gone into this corner. I've got my thing. I'm gonna put it inside and get that corner and push it from both sides until I get that corner pushed out. And again, I'm not using anything sharp. If you use a chopstick or a really big knitting needle, this actually works really, really well, but it's not trying to overdo it. And there we go. We've made a pillow with a pocket. And now all we have to do is take our pillow form and shove it in here. Remember, the pillow form is a little bit bigger than the pillow, but I wanted a nice full pillow. I'm just gonna push all the four corners into the corners of the pillow. Let it really fill it out. And then I just button this thing up. Now this would be a good place to put maybe a picture of Grandpa in the pocket. Now, this was a smaller shirt. I think this was a medium. It would be definitely helpful if you were making a shirt either with you were using a medium-sized shirt but a smaller pillow form, or you were using a bigger shirt. So just depends on how big Grandpa is, or the uncle, whoever you're making this from. But there we go. There is a memory pillow made out of a button-up shirt, and this was done in virtually no time. Now, I did tell you that I would find something that you could do with the sleeves. So I'm going to show that to you right now. I've got a camera up there I'm looking at to show it to you. If you took these sleeves, this is like a higher pro tip, you could take these sleeves if you wanted to and either stuff them with something or just put them into the seam on the sides here, into the seams on the sides, and they would add to the pillow, and then you could find a way to just button them over back together, or even make them where they would hug onto a chair or something. I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't really think it needs to be done for that. In fact, these sleeves, when they open, get pretty big, and you could actually use that material in a memory quilt or something else. So let's say maybe you had a bunch of shirts from like a grandfather. You could take the sleeves and do a patchwork quilt maybe for grandma, and then take the rest of the shirts and make pillows for all of the rest of the family. So you sort of made a double use piece. Anyway, so that's what it would look like if you added those sleeves onto it. It would give it sort of maybe a weird look of a pillow kind of thing. So I hope you try out this project. It is such a fun way for you to commemorate someone you love, and without necessarily having to have any really amazing sewing skills. If you could just do a basic stitch on a sewing machine, you can make one of these. So until next time, stay crafty. Bye for now. I don't know. I love this pocket, but I also think maybe a label on the back would be a good idea. Yeah, maybe I gotta do a video about how making labels. Maybe a label on the back would be a good idea. Yeah, maybe I gotta do a video about how making labels.